and 10 a.m. But that's secure.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to FPC Radio Live. That's right. We're back on the air, and yeah, that's right. We're rocking and rolling here on FPC Radio Live, just like we do every single day. But apparently, we're having a little bit of an issue with our stream. So if you're not seeing us on camera, if it's a little bit choppy, just bear with us while we try to work through this all. But we are here. We've missed a few days in the middle of the week. And that's fine, because for the next couple of weeks, we're going to kind of have a softer schedule as we kind of get through this immediate post-NFL stretch of time. So we'll probably be on the air Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the next few weeks as we prepare to get closer and closer to free agency, and then we'll pop on more. So for all of our fans out there that might be upset that they don't get to see us, or at least see me more than 3 days a week, I assure you, there's plenty of video to go back and watch again if you really need to. So, good morning, John. How are you?
Good morning. Kind of a strange day up here in the Northeast. It was like 60 degrees at 6 this morning. It's raining out. I thought I had been transported to Tampa, but fear not. It'll be 40 degrees by 2 p.m. and about 25 overnight, so back to winter. But doing okay. Just a little bit of a hangover from no NFL, although the NFL is always in the news, obviously, with where all these quarterbacks are going to play next year. But I think we both agree that we're both happy the season is over. And I think the extra week made, right, because when you think about it, Ian, the Bengals and Rams, that Super Bowl game was their 21st game of the season. When the Patriots won 6 Super Bowls, they needed 19 games. I think that may have had something to do with the game being okay, not great, and just the teams at the end maybe not having a lot left. So I think if the teams are feeling it, then maybe we who cover it or fans or whatever probably were like, okay, let's move on to something else at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a little bit of a, catch your breath moment, for those of us who live and breathe with the NFL, and then you add in the fact that we actually kind of do some work or pretend like we're professionals when we cover the sport. So there is a lot. There's a nice break afterwards, but very shortly, especially when you're doing a radio show multiple times every day, and the primary focus of it is the NFL. You tend to have to get creative when it gets to certain points in time during the off season. But for now, we have a little bit of a lull. There's free agency comes up in about a month from now. It's March 16th is the beginning of the new league year, so that legal tampering period starts on the 14th. So teams can quote unquote negotiate, not officially sign contracts with free agents or upcoming free agents. And then, of course, the draft comes around in a couple months, and training camps and mini camps and all that fun stuff. So sooner or later, John, we're going to be right back in the mix of the NFL season. So like I said, it feels like a long time, but right now I think we needed this nice little break. And look, to be honest with you, I don't know if it was so much the extra game, but we talked about this on Monday when we kind of recapped the Super Bowl. I just thought there was, especially on the Bengals side, some subpar performances, especially from the quarterback position, which has a trickle down effect from with everyone. I mean, I thought their defense played fairly well. Towards the end, it got obviously I think they kind of just ran out of steam, but I think they played fairly well on defense. I think they were just sloppy on offense, and part of that's play calling, part of that's performance from the quarterback, and obviously the talent on the team. So I'm excited for the offseason. We'll see how long that lasts. Maybe by Sunday, it'll hit me. Kind of like what I'm hoping what's going to happen with Tom Brady is that he's all well and good right now with his decision, but in a couple months when things used to start ramping up for the next season, I'm hoping he starts to get that yearning, that inside fire starts to burn. He's like, you know what, screw this, I'm coming back. So
I'm starting to lean that he's coming back, Ian, and then I'll tell you why. First of all, reports are that Tampa's interested in Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. So if they go ahead and acquire either of those two quarterbacks, they'll be set at the quarterback position. At that point, Brady can go back to Tampa and say, you know what, I want to come back, and you're going to have to trade me. or release me. Kind of the way Rob
Yeah, I was
Gronkowski
just
got
going
out
to say, pull a
a couple of
Gronk.
years ago. Yeah, and at that point, what's Tampa going to say? No, Tom, we want you back. We're going to have a really competitive quarterback room with you and Russell Wilson. Like, that's not going to work, obviously. So at that point, maybe this is just a grand master plan for Brady to say, okay, I can get out of it for a while, appease Giselle until, 2 months from now, and she's like, get the hell out of the house. You're driving me crazy. Although they've got a pretty, cool lifestyle. It's not like they're getting up in the morning, saying, okay, we're going to the supermarket today, and then we're going to go to the dollar store. I mean, they're not that retired couple. But I think that could be it. And at that point, he says, okay, you've got Russell Wilson, you've got Deshaun Watson, whoever it may be. Because Tampa should be in. I mean, if they can get a viable quarterback, they can still contend. I mean, the NFC appears weaker than the AFC. And why not? And then at that point, Brady says, I'm coming back. And trade me to wherever or release me. And at that point, I don't think it would get contentious with the Buccaneers.
No, and look, I there's nothing more I want than for him to come back and somehow win a Super Bowl with the 49ers. That's my non-Patriots fantasy for next season. Obviously, I want to see the Patriots go perfect and win the Super Bowl and all that stuff. But if I can't get that, I would love to see Tom go and win a Super Bowl in his in his home where he grew up and everything like that. And look, I waver sometimes hour to hour, minute to minute. Like sometimes I'm so far to one side thinking, yeah, there's no way he's coming back, and then I start thinking, I'm like, well, maybe he is. Like, why does he keep like? This is the ultimate troll. You know what's going to end up happening, John? This is all going to be some sort of like marketing campaign for some Brady brand thing. Like, you know what it is. Like
Yeah.
all this back and forth, all this wavering, all these like little things. And then I'm going to be pissed. I'm going to be, God damn it. But yeah, as long as there's some finality to it one way or the other, that's all I'm looking forward to. Obviously, I want to see him play. I don't know where I'm like 50-50, but like, again, I just, there's no part of me that's so sure one way or the other. I think he's going to ultimately end up staying retired, but I'm not completely ruling it out. Or at least I'm hoping. Maybe again that's a little bit of the fandom. But look, Tampa, you're right. They're a team that should still be able to contend, but they need a really good quarterback. And this isn't like if you're going into next season with Wayne Gabbert, good luck. You might be a 500 team. It is what it is. And this is the point that a lot of people were trying to make about the Buccaneers. When in hindsight, people were saying, "Oh, well, of course Tom Brady went to a Super Bowl." Well, guess what? You can have all the talent in the world. If you don't have a quarterback, I don't give a bleep who you are. You're going to be a bad team, and that's exactly what happened with the Bucs. And look, we're not just talking about like a couple of years. I mean, we're talking about the entire history of this franchise, save for like a 3 or 4 year stretch in the late '90s, early 2000s. They were a terrible franchise, and they were a terrible franchise for a couple of years leading into this. And part of the reason was they never had a quarterback. Well, guess what? Tom Brady comes in. They change the landscape, change the mentality of that current team. And there's no way to measure that because you hear how guys like Mike Evans talks now, and some of these lifelong Bucks who are now know what it's like to win. They talk about wanting to win more. So I think there's a mentality change there. That's all well and good, and that's going to be important moving forward for them. However, it's not going to matter if Kyle Trask is your quarterback. Then you're just going to be a team in a very weak NFC South and relatively weak NFC overall. So yeah, I mean, look, I don't think Brady's coming back to Tampa one way or the other. Either he's retired or he's going to end up playing elsewhere. Russell Wilson's a nice option. Deshaun Watson is a nice option. Again, assuming his legal issues are um, sorted and preferably, I would assume that most fans would want to see those legal issues solved and favor Deshaun Watson, as in the results of this case seem to not necessarily, maybe not exonerate him, but certainly add more context because I know it would be hard for me personally if I were a Buccaneers fan, knowing and having if there was any truth behind any of the accusations, being able to cheer that guy on as the face of your franchise. Because we're not just talking about another player, not just And I know, like, okay, maybe it's a double standard, but it is what it is. The quarterback's the face of your franchise. And
Mhm.
you Bucks fans, are they going to open their arms to a guy that allegedly has a long history of some felonious activity? So, uh, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I think, like I said, Russell Wilson's a nice option for him. I'm not as big on Russell Wilson as some people are, so I don't think that necessarily guarantees that they're a Super Bowl contender. But I think it certainly puts them in the mix among the NFC playoff teams.
Yeah, and also depending what they do with the rest of the roster, what contracts they're going to have to move or renegotiate. They've done a pretty good job in the draft the last couple of years as well. So I think there's talent there to contend. Yeah, the NFC, I keep looking at it. Okay, Dallas is good in the NFC East. But when you really think about it, this season they were 6-6 outside the division. If Rodgers returns to Green Bay, I would assume they'll be the favorite in the North. But once you get to the playoffs, what the hell happens? And in the West, the Rams are the defending champs. But do they look like a team that's ready to repeat? I don't think so.
No, I don't see. I don't see the Rams as being like a team that's going to stick around quite a bit. I think this is. I mean, I think they might contend next year, but like they played a really good game against Tampa. Although again, I think Tampa's defensive play that game was atrocious in very
Mm-hmm.
key situations. So I don't know how much I want to give credit to the Rams for. I mean, again, at the end of the day, the Rams almost lost that game, being up 27-3. So
Right.
you got to give them credit where credit's due. Maybe part of this is me kind of holding on to my last, like all my criticisms of the Rams. And look, I mean, I don't, they got some talent on it, but we think Aaron Donald's certainly coming back. Matt Stafford, the guy's been in the league 14 years. I don't think he's all of a sudden figured out and going to go on a championship run of epic proportions. I think the guy is a pretty good quarterback. That's it. I don't like this idea that he's a Hall of Famer, throw that out the window. Like right now, absolutely not. Absolutely
No.
not. Like and like it was kind of funny because Richard Sherman on his podcast kind of sparked this conversation or at least added to it because of course, we know how these things work. Every knee-jerk reaction involves a Hall of Fame candidacy being thrust in front of us when it hadn't been there before. But someone responded, "Oh, Jason McIntyre." I mean, just saying the name, it kind of gives me a little, some chuckles. But, his point was like he listed off all these stats where like Matt Stafford was like ranked like fourth or fifth or sixth. He's like, this is a guy, blah blah blah. And then Richard Sherman was like, that's kind of the point. Like you're trying to advocate for a guy who is never, ever the best at his position, and not just not the best, but really kind of on the outside looking in. Like
Mm-hmm.
McIntyre's point was, oh well, it's kind of hard to make all pros and Pro Bowls when you're competing with Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, so on and so forth. And like I said, I mean, I'm sitting there scratching my head. I'm like, that's the point. And Richard Sherman clearly agreed because he was like, yeah, that's the point. This isn't the Hall of Very Good. This is the Hall of Fame, the Hall of the best of the best of the best. And Matt Stafford has never been that. Can that
He was
change?
voted.
Yeah.
He's been voted to the Pro Bowl once. Now
Yeah.
that's not the be all end all. I get that. All Pro obviously is what you look at and say, okay, that's for real. Again, there's only two per position, so obviously, whoever wins the MVP generally is the first team All Pro quarterback, and then the runner up is second. We saw that this year with Rodgers and Brady. We saw it last year with Rodgers and Mahomes. So, those guys kind of do dominate first, second team All Pro, but Pro Bowl, he said the one Pro Bowl. At least Philip Rivers went to 8 Pro Bowls, and he was playing in the same conference with Brady and Roethlisberger. And again, the Pro Bowls get kind of a little bit wishy-washy, in my opinion. This is an old term, huh? Jesus.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah.
Wishy-washy, but Mac Jones went to the Pro Bowl this year. I don't think of him as a Pro Bowl quarterback. It's just because
Kyler
no one
Murray,
wants to
the
go.
last 2 years went to the
Yeah,
Pro
it's
Bowl
baited,
over.
right.
Yeah, so look, I think
Over Brady 2 years ago. Remember that? That was ridiculous.
Again, that's only the beginning. I think the MVP was a little bit more ridiculous, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. That's in the past. We're not going to keep talking about that. But I mean, the Pro Bowl used to have a a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more to it. I think players certainly appreciate getting to the Pro Bowl, but yeah, you're right though. I mean, you're going to look at all pros more than Pro Bowls, and look, I mean, Richard Sherman is right. I think Matt Stafford is a product of the new NFL, and
Mhm.
that's not to take anything away from him, but he's never been spectacular. When he's accumulated yards and stats, it's been on bad teams. And I
Mhm.
don't, the fact that the Lions are bad aren't necessarily Matt Stafford's fault, but he is the quarterback. And I think it's easy for people to just kind of dismiss that when it's like, oh well, he played for the Lions. Well, what do you expect? Well, I expect someone who you think is a Hall of Famer to elevate whoever is on their team. And the fact that they couldn't win a playoff game or whatever in his time there, like I mean, like we've talked about it before. Like this isn't a team that was short of talent, certainly not on the offensive side. So you're talking about a guy who won Pro Bowl, finally got a Super Bowl. In which, look, I mean, I'm glad he didn't get the MVP because he wouldn't have deserved it. But excuse me, sorry, my voice is cracking a little bit. Apparently, this is me flustered. But the guy's always had elite. I mean, talk about a guy who's always had elite talent around.
Mhm.
I mean, we talk about Brady and like, wow, he had like 1 or 2 years of really elite talent. Matt Stafford has always, always had elite talent around him. So yes, he's going to put up numbers in this pass-happy NFL. Of course, he's going to, especially when you had a guy who, and we've talked about Calvin Johnson. The guy just got into the Hall of Fame first ballot on a short career. You're talking about one
Mhm.
of the greatest receivers of all time. So yes, you're going to put up some numbers. And I think we're all seeing now Cooper Cup. Well, not now. I think a lot of people who are paying attention knew that Cooper Cup was a pretty darn good receiver. Um, there's a lot of talent on this Rams team. When you can lose Robert Woods and seamlessly transition to Odell Beckham Jr., yeah, there's a lot of talent. So for me, I look at Matt Stafford. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. That's it.
I think he's a you say pretty good quarterback. I would say very good quarterback, but again, maybe we're just mincing words here. I'm working on my quarterback tiers, and
Yeah.
I think I have him around in the league right now, eighth or ninth. So yeah, that's I think a good quarterback. How about we kind of agree on
Okay.
that? I think the top tier now that we're gonna let's put Brady to the side. I do think there's a chance he comes back, but with him officially being retired, to me the top tier is Rodgers, Mahomes, and Allen. I still think that those are the
Mm.
three guys that can just do more. And then the next year, and they can all move up in due time, would be the likes of Burrow and Herbert. And I'm going to put Stafford in there with Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson and maybe Lamar. And then the next tier would be whoever. But, like Dak Prescott would be maybe Derek Carr, those types of guys, Kirk Cousins. So that's how I would kind of separate them. He's look, the guy is 10-40 against winning teams in his career.
Yeah, that's
10
bad.
and 40. That's not good. And, again, I'm trying to move on from this season because the Packers disappointed in the playoffs. They were fortunate they didn't have to play the Packers at Lambeau Field in the NFC Championship game, although Rodgers sucks in the NFC Championship games. I get it. But I don't think Matt Stafford would have had all that good of a game at Lambeau Field. Maybe it would have been a 13-10 game like the game against San Francisco was. But do give him credit, though, because the last three playoff wins are all by, 3 points, and they were all in some sort of come from behind fashion or game winning drive. So I give him credit for that. But I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. He's in that next group of, these guys are really, really good, but no MVPs, like no serious MVP votes, no all pros. It's just, always been like the 6th or 7th best quarterback in football. I don't know if that equals Hall of Fame.
No, it doesn't.
I don't think it does.
No,
I
think that's very emphatically no. I mean, because then you're
Right.
talking about like, okay, like then what? Then again, it's the Hall of Very Good if that's the case. But no, like being the fit, and again to say, well, what do you expect when you have great? Well, that's the point. That's the point. When you can't elevate yourself, I mean, who cares who your peers are your competition when it comes to Hall of Fame. Like you can't elevate yourself to that level at any point in your career, then I don't know what to tell you. And look, that could change. I mean, he's what 33, 34. He could have a couple of good years
Yep.
left, and maybe he does win an MVP. Maybe he does win another Super Bowl, and then the conversation changes. But right now, absolutely not. And
No.
we're going through that period of time, John, where the knee-jerk reactions come out, where everything that happens is the greatest. Aaron
Mhm.
Donald all of a sudden is the greatest defensive player. I'm like, I'm sitting here scratching. I'm like, I don't even think he's the greatest defensive tackle of all time, let alone greatest defensive player. So let's pump the brakes on it a little bit.
Reggie White. Reggie
Yeah,
White is the answer
100%,
to the
100%.
Yeah, and Reggie White played. I mean, and Aaron Donald does too. They can play all along the defensive line. You can do a lot with them. You know what was interesting? I saw Aaron Donald at the Laker game the other night. I keep forgetting how short he is. He's 6'1", because LeBron went up and gave him a bear hug, and LeBron dwarfed him. And
Yeah.
LeBron's 6'9", 270 himself. I mean, he could probably play defensive line if he so chose. But yeah, look, I love Aaron Donald. He's spectacular, but still the two best defensive players I've ever seen. Front seven, because it's tough to compare front seven with guys in the secondary. Lawrence Taylor, number one, Reggie White, number two. I mean, those two guys are the top 5 players in the history of the sport, regardless of position. I think we all kind of agree that it's, Brady, Jim Brown, Jerry Rice, Lawrence Taylor, Reggie White. So that's what the Athletic came out with, and I agree wholeheartedly with
Yeah,
them. I think that's
yeah.
a great list.
Yeah, I can't make a, I can't make an argument against that at all. I mean, that's and look, I mean, I oh man, I like Aaron
But
Donald.
is Aaron Donald better than Ray Lewis? I don't think
No,
so.
I don't
Ray
think
Lewis
so. And I
Ray
can't
Lewis
stand Ray Lewis. Like outside of
Right.
football, I can't stand. I mean, well, first of all, legal issues aside,
Right.
I think the guy is so full of himself. Like whenever I see him come out on stage, I think he came out recently for the awards, and I just muted it because I'm like, he's gonna somehow make this about himself. You know
Right.
what I mean? And that's kind of Ray Lewis. And I'm like, I get it. Ravens fans, they love Ray Lewis because I understand it. But like whenever he like talks, like I almost feel like he's just not saying anything. Like he just
Right.
says words, and eventually it all comes back to him and how he or this and that. I mean, the guy's
Right.
Certainly not humble. But again, that's what made him a great player because of his mentality and how he played the game. So
Yeah, on the football field, he's unsurpassed. I mean, he's spectacular. I mean, again, a leader of the team. I mean, again, you don't have to like the man,
yeah.
But as far as
But
he and Ed Reed made that team relevant for decades.
Well,
and with him, a decade and a half.
Ed Reed is a
another
better
great player.
football player than Aaron Donald. I mean, Ed Reed is one of the smartest, most instinctive safeties, and played the game during a time where he was facing Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Brett Favre, Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, the guy played the safety position higher than many players in one of the most elite quarterback eras of the NFL and was successful. So to me, give me Ed Reed over, and not to mention when Belichick and Brady fawn over one player like they do Ed Reed, guess what? He's a better football player than Aaron Donald. Like I don't need knee-jerk reactions on Good Morning Football to try to convince me otherwise.
That's a tough one. That's debatable. I mean, again, Aaron Donald has won 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards, which is pretty impressive.
But those again, it's
so is JJ Watt.
Yeah, exactly. And look, I mean, it's kind of like the MVP, where it's like Defensive Player of the Year favors linemen and linebackers. Correct? Would you say? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's mostly about sacks.
Sacks, exactly. And like I'm not trying to take any credit away from him. I think, but personally, if you're going to ask me who is a better, smarter football player, Ed Reed. So I think the big point being is like when you get up on camera and sit there and try to make a claim that Aaron Donald's the greatest defensive player ever, you're just doing it for a reaction because that's just an absurd statement, and that's not to take anything away from Aaron Donald. It's just pointing out just like how can you ignore the 100-plus year history of this league and sit there and shamefully say that this guy is the best, where it's like 3 years ago, I saw him get absolutely demolished in the Super Bowl and was non-existent. The best defensive the best defensive player in the history of football. I'm sorry, that doesn't happen. And this was a double team.
I saw Reggie White.
Yeah.
I saw Reggie White in Super Bowls like lift offensive tackles and throw them like a piece of luggage and just blow. I still can't believe Reggie White was the MVP of that Super Bowl with the Patriots. He just wrecked them. I mean,
Desmond Howard. Talk about knee-jerk reaction and living in the moment. Like, Jesus.
I guess because it was the last touchdown or the last point of
Well,
the game.
I mean,
the third quarter,
it
people
was
just forgot.
well because like if you remember, like at that point, you're coming out of that half, you're like, oh my God, the Patriots actually have a chance in this. Like, I don't think
Yeah,
any of us realistically thought they were going to go in and win that game. But after you're like, wow, they're actually stick, and then it's fine, and then that's it, and
yeah,
then so I
yeah.
understand why he did it. I don't, if we're gonna sit there and talk about some of the least deserving MVPs, I'm sure that would be in the conversation, but I understand why like it was given to him, and I don't say he was undeserving because it was a huge play. I mean, you're talking about potentially one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history had the Patriots won that game, and they were in it until then, and then that was kind
Yep.
of it. So
Yeah, it was 27. It was 27-21. He returns it. They get the 2-point conversion, 35-21, and that's the final score. I don't think there was any scoring the final 22 or 23 minutes. And at that point, that's when Reggie White just started throwing people around like rag dolls. I mean, those are interesting things. Mean Joe Green. I mean, again, I'm older. Mean Joe Green was as disruptive as Aaron Donald, and look, and he sustained it for a long period of time. Probably the greatest defense in the history of the sport.
We talked about this on Monday too, and like again,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that on average, linemen were a little bit bigger and the game was a little bit tougher in the trenches, 20, 25 years ago as it is now, because we're seeing everything. And you talk about Aaron Donald's size. I mean, Reggie White could bear hug the guy and you wouldn't even see Aaron Donald. I mean, that's how. I mean, that's what we're talking about in terms of size difference, and it translates to the line because you're getting linemen now that are, maybe 285, 300 as opposed to 325, 345. Like the big eat the buffet at the hotel linemen. We're talking about they're still big guys, but they're more meaner because they have to be because the game is a little bit more free flowing. It's more lean towards offense. It's more running quarterback. So these linemen have to be in better shape. They can't just kind of stay in their area and just lock down the line. They have to be able to move. And again, that means these linemen aren't going to be as big, which means there can be more opportunities for defenders and so on and so forth. So Aaron Donald's great. Absolutely. Greatest defensive player of all time. Get out of here with that. Like, don't even start that conversation. If you want to have that conversation a few years from now, if he racks up a few more all pros and maybe he goes to and wins another Super Bowl, sure, maybe we can have that conversation. But right now it's just not appropriate. And I hate that that's the discourse following games like this. And it's like that for the most part.
Yeah, LT was the guy for me. I mean, I just see the guy blow up game after game. He like invented a position. He made left tackles rich because you had to go out there and get them, right? You had a game plan for him. You had to have your left tackle, your tight end, your back, concerned with him, and that opened up things for every other player on his team. The man was a freak. I mean, he was 6'4", about 250. At that time, that was a good sized guy, and he ran like a defensive back, and his closing speed was incredible. Yeah, to me, he and Reggie White are the two greatest defensive players. Again, you start to go in the secondary, it becomes a little bit different because some of those guys are dependent on pass rushes. And I was a big Ronnie Lott guy. I think Ronnie Lott was one of the all-time greats. Charles Woodson and Rod Woodson, to me, are terribly underrated. I think Dion's a little overrated, but nonetheless a great player. So all of those guys are,
Darren
them all on my team. Darren Woodson was. I'm still wondering why he's not in the Hall of Fame because the Cowboys, which won 3 Super Bowl titles in 4 years, only have, I believe, Charles Haley from their defense in the Hall of Fame, and that was a team that had a really good defense. Yeah, that was not just an offensive team.
And Charles Haley won 2 Super Bowls outside of Dallas too.
Yes,
so
yeah, he's just won wherever he was kind of like the Tom Brady of defense. Like, just get Charles Haley, you're going to win.
Yeah, there was a brief moment in time where people pushed back at Brady because it was like, well, Charles Haley technically has 5. Well, guess what? Not anymore.
Well, yeah, now he's got 7. Yeah,
now he's 7. Now there's no one close. But no, look, I mean, we started this conversation talking about Matt Stafford's Hall of Fame candidacy and the now Aaron Donald, and both conversations kind of, again, they're tough conversations to have immediately after fact because the way things are discussed now, you're going to get those over the top one way or the other reactions. Oh, this was the greatest this, or this was the greatest that. We saw some knucklehead on WEEI, and I'm not going to name names, but I think if you had 2 guesses, you're only going to need one, wrote that Sean McVay is a better coach than Bill Belichick. And I'm just like, that's absurd. That's absurd. That's just, I mean, you're entitled to have your opinion, but that's a wrong opinion, and there's no objective.
Oh, we're talking about. I mean, I think if I had a franchise and both were free agents, I'd probably go with McVay only because of the age.
Well,
I mean, one guy's
yeah,
30,
but that's not. No, we're talking about better coach, and I don't even know if Sean McVay is a top 5 coach in the league, let alone better than Bill Belichick. So
I think he is.
Well, okay. I mean, I'm not saying he isn't or is. I'm saying like we can list a handful of coaches and have a conversation. The conversation we can have is him being better than Bill Belichick, and that to me again, is
historically, no one's going to make that case. That's idiotic.
No, currently, historically, it doesn't matter. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely. Well, I mean, look, I mean, you go back the last 2 years. I mean, and people are ridiculous about Bill Belichick in New England and how they react to him. But the last 2 years, he took a COVID opt-out team and somehow put a resemblance of a team together with Cam Newton. I mean, Cam Newton is 0-627 in his last how many starts outside of New England. Think about that. I obviously that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but not that different. Bit, yeah. Like it's not that crazy. Like literally, he's like 20 or 15 or whatever in his last however many starts outside of New England. He somehow won 6 games with Bill Belichick, and I know again people have this absurdly upside down standard. What we saw last year was incredibly impressive, not only from the team but from the rookie quarterback. Because getting to the playoffs with a rookie quarterback isn't. It's common, but it's not common enough. You know what I mean? Like that's an impressive feat in and of itself. So to me, like Belichick just didn't get like stupider over the last 12 months. You know what I mean? Like so to sit here and say like, Sean McVay, that's 100% in the moment knee jerk reaction. That's just wrong and idiotic, really. So,
but McVay's been in the league 5 years.
Okay.
I think in that 5-year period, he has 2 more regular season wins than Belichick. He has 2 more postseason wins than Belichick. They've gone to the playoffs.
Has fewer Super Bowls.
No, they both have 2 appearances and 1 Super Bowl win over the last 5 years.
Okay. Because you cut it off at 5 years. So like even before.
That's the only time he's been a head coach. I mean,
okay. So how? But how does that make him better than Belichick? Do we just cut off?
No, I'm not saying. I'm saying that it's in discussion. I think right now that you got to give the guy some credit. You can give him credit. You can give him. Well, you can give him plenty of credit without saying something ridiculous. Like I don't think he's ridiculous. He's the best coach in the league right now.
It's ridiculous. Because like a few weeks ago, we weren't talking about that. We're talking about in the moment. Like even in the middle of that game, he was making decisions where you're sitting there scratching your head like, Sean McVay, what are you doing? Why are you calling this? Why are you getting in front of yourself? His flaw that we've talked about over and over again, and credit where credit's due. They won the game, and I'll give him credit for winning a Super Bowl. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but to sit here 3 days after the Super Bowl and be like, you know what? I think Sean McVay is better than Bill Belichick. No, that's just wrong. Because I don't know. As of right now, I think it is a discussion again.
But why?
Why?
Well, because the other guy has a losing record in 9 years without Tom Brady. Okay, I think that has something to do with the discussion.
But they just won. They just won last year. They won. They had a winning record. They had the first seed late in the season in the AFC. Yeah, did they hold on to it? No, but they made the playoffs. So you're talking about Belichick's time where he spent in Cleveland, where the team got pulled, the rug got pulled out under him, where that was 30-something years, 25, 30 years ago. No, I'm talking about right now. Sean McVay is not a better coach than Bill Belichick. It's not in the discussion. It's not a discussion.
Oh, I think it's in the discussion. No, I'll tell you right now, if they were all free agents, if the 2 of them were made free agents,
but that's not John. That's not the conversation, because you're bringing in age. Of course, someone's going to sit there and say, well, if I need a coach for 15 years, am I going to go with 36-year-old Sean McVay or 69-year-old Bill Belichick? Well, duh. I mean, you're obviously going to go with Sean McVay.
That's part of it, all right?
That is it. That is it, because you're presenting an argument that suggests you're talking about drafting for the next 15 years. Like, if you were to tell me that Bill Belichick, his walking corpse at 85 years old, would still be alive, I'd take Bill Belichick. But I don't know. Like, that's not the discussion. You're bringing in a hypothetical. I'm talking about currently, right now, what we know. Belichick is still a better coach than Sean McVay. Like what makes Sean McVay so much better?
He
what
just
makes him,
won the Super Bowl.
Oh,
I got to give him credit for that, right?
Awesome.
Well,
Bruce Arians won the
that's
Super
what
Bowl
we
last
judge
year.
all these guys
Bruce Arians
with
won the
Tom
Super
Brady. Yeah, with Tom Brady. That's the big
Wait a
thing.
minute. No, John. I thought this was all about winning the Super Bowl. So Sean McVay won a Super Bowl, so he's a better coach than Bill Belichick. Bruce Arians won a Super Bowl. He's a better coach than Bill Belichick.
Get Tom Brady.
Great.
A big thing. I mean,
they had Aaron Donald, Odell Beckham Jr., Cooper Kupp, Jalen Ramsey, all pro players, first-round players.
Good.
So does that not Sean McVay?
Has Bill Belichick ever won a
Bill
Super Bowl with a bad roster?
Bill Belichick, yes, of course he has.
When?
Of course he has.
A bad roster. When does he won a Super Bowl with a bad roster?
When has any team won a Super Bowl with a bad roster? I'll sit here and win.
So obviously you need the players.
No, that's not the point, John. That's not the point. You're telling me that Sean McVay is a better coach than Bill Belichick because he won the Super Bowl last year. And now I'm telling you there isn't a discussion. And now
then we won't discuss it then.
No, there isn't a discussion because there's no realm in which Bill Belichick has somehow fallen off where Sean McVay has elevated him. It's all about the reaction in the moment. You're knocking Bill Belichick for not winning with the Cleveland Browns 25 years ago, and then saying, "Well, when has he ever won with a bad roster?"
Eliminate that.
When has Sean McVay ever won with a bad roster?
I don't know because he's won every year he's coached. He's gone to the playoffs 4 out of 5 years. He took over a franchise, Ian, that had 10 straight losing seasons and moved to LA.
Yeah,
well,
great,
that's pretty good.
Great, and then they shelled a bunch of money out to go build and add talent to that team. So to sit here and pretend like he took
shell out $160 million last offseason?
Yes,
okay.
They did, and they went to the playoffs after missing the playoffs for the first time in 20 years, 15 years, or whatever it is. So you're saying, okay, so again,
Tom Brady.
John,
won that year.
Okay, great. Awesome.
I'm making a bigger point that Tom Brady. I mean, this I
agree.
Even more.
John, you're mixing up. We're talking about you're bringing in like records without Brady and who won Super Bowls.
Part of it, isn't it?
No, it is, but it's like it's also you're trying to say that Sean McVay is a better coach right now than Bill Belichick. Even saying it's in the discussion. I'm telling you that there really isn't a discussion. And your point being is like, oh, well, he won a Super Bowl. Well, great. Bruce Arians won a Super Bowl. John Harbaugh has won a Super Bowl. I don't think he's a better coach than Bill Belichick. Mike Tomlin won a Super Bowl 15 years ago. Was he a better coach than Bill Belichick? No. It's not about just
now. I don't think Bill Belichick is as good a coach as he was 15 years ago. No way. No.
Yes.
I think
why not? Why not?
Why not? Because again, first of all, you thought he was great last year as a coach. There were a lot of mix-ups. I mean, there were, first of all, defensive calls against Dallas.
He had him for the middle part of the Super Bowl. So what you're doing is ignoring Sean McVay's flaws and highlighting Bill Belichick, which is classic Boston radio because it's like, oh, well, Bill Belichick is a big meanie who doesn't, treat us right. So we're gonna shit on him as much as possible.
I don't put that factor, and I think he's the greatest coach in the Super Bowl era, no question about it. But I think he's lost some of his fastball. And again, part of that is because he doesn't have Tom Brady to cover a lot of the sins. That's, to me, pretty evident.
But based on what, though?
Based on the record without Tom Brady.
The record, they went to the goddamn playoffs last year. They had a winning record with a rookie quarterback. This is after
10-8 last year. That's great.
It is.
Okay, how did they play? Okay, the team they have to beat to win their division. The last 2 times they played, they gave up 80 points against Buffalo.
Great.
Buffalo never.
Great. Awesome. Let's boil down his entire thing down to this one game.
That's kind of
no, it isn't because Bill Belichick's been coaching for 20 years, so he has that credibility. He's been with this, and what you're doing is devaluing something that is an impressive accomplishment. After losing the greatest quarterback of all time, they spent 1 year. Listen, they spent 1 year outside of the playoffs and then returned with a rookie quarterback. That's impressive.
Yeah,
that's impressive.
So he also spent $160 million on free agency.
Okay, so what did the Rams do? So how are you giving Sean McVay credit for being in the discussion and faulting Bill Belichick because they spent a bunch of money? Well, guess what? Every team spends that much money. They just spent that much money in one season because they had to, and they had that money available, in which they've been doing that for the last 10 or 15 years. So your point about Sean McVay being in the conversation because he won a Super Bowl, well, that's not a good reason for him to be in a conversation, especially when
you can't bash Matt Stafford and say he's a pretty good quarterback, and then say Matt.
I'm not.
But somehow they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
I don't know how they won.
Because they are littered. Because they are littered with talent from top to bottom on that roster. We talked about it all year. To sit here and pretend like Sean McVay took this downtrodden franchise that underachieved.
They'd had 10 straight losing seasons when he took over. That's a fact. 10 straight losing seasons in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's pretty impressive.
Yes, and then again, John, they went out. They got Aaron Donald. They got Jalen Ramsey.
They had Aaron Donald. The first 3 years, they had losing seasons with Aaron Donald. He played in St. Louis for 3 years. I know he's making Pro Bowls and all pro, but they weren't winning. They moved up to get Jared Goff, who we both agree is not all that good, and they were smart enough to move on from him. And then they got Matt Stafford, who I guess if you don't like Sean McVay, you're going to say he's an awesome quarterback. If you like Sean McVay, you're going to say he's a mediocre quarterback. But somehow it worked. I think he's in the discussion, Ian. That's all I'm saying. It's like this is like saying Tom Hanks is still the best actor because he made movies.
That's a terrible comparison because Tom Hanks has been irrelevant for much of the last 10 or 15 years when it comes to marquee movies. Guess who has it? Bill Belichick. Guess who's been at the top of his craft for a very, very long time? That's Bill Belichick. In one season in which you portray it as more of a failure than when it really is a success on his behalf.
No, it was a good season.
Okay, so how again, you're telling me that Bill Belichick has somehow lost his fastball and that like Sean McVay is elevated because he just won a Super Bowl and he's somehow done this with a team that had 10 straight losing seasons, great. But then you're knocking Bill Belichick for spending money on talent when the Rams are just littered with talent and literally have given away their future to go in and get the best players. So again, it's
they also have the Rams
also
have the. I think it's a discussion. I don't think we can just say right now. Again, it's been a narrative for close to 20 years, and I've agreed with it. Bill Belichick is the best coach in football. How many times have we had a discussion? Who's the second best coach in the NFL? I was like.
That's the discussion, but maybe that's the discussion that Sean McVay's.
But I think that's a lot closer. That's why it is a discussion at this point. You got to give the kid credit. You can call him a kid. I am younger than you.
He's slightly older than me, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. We're of the same ilk. Let's just put it that way. But,
that's not a bad look like for you. He's a good looking dude, Sean McVay.
No, but real quick, the point, like him being in discussion for second best quarterback, second best coach in the league is not the same as saying he's in the discussion for being the best coach in the league.
Yeah, I think he is now.
But again, that's your opinion, and I'm telling you you're wrong because there's no basis to that other than the immediate knee-jerk.
Wrong or right, it's an opinion.
No, you can have this whole idea that it's my opinion. You can have your own opinion. It doesn't mean that it's wrong though. That's what I'm saying.
I didn't say Mike McCarthy is in the discussion or Matt LaFleur or every other guy that's stood up for my man Aaron Rodgers' career.
Like I said, you're basing it. I'm telling you what you're thinking. This is how arrogant I am. How about that? This is what you're thinking, John.
That's awesome. I love that. That's awesome.
No, I think it's more on just the most recent thing that happened. Everyone's like, oh my God, Sean McVay this, but I think it's absurd to suggest that he is in that category. This isn't Bill Belichick who hadn't won anything in 15 years. This is a guy who, just a few years ago, embarrassingly outcoached Sean McVay on the biggest stage. That's a huge factor because we're not talking about we're talking about head-to-head, mano-a-mano. And to me, I don't think like Bill Belichick is in those 3 years has, gone to the loony bin. So the idea that, the only conversation that exists that Sean McVay is somehow in that discussion is based on recency bias. And I'm saying you need to cool it a little bit because I've seen Sean McVay's a better coach. Like we talked about earlier, Aaron Donald's the greatest defensive player ever. All these things. And I'm just like, stop it.
Yeah.
They had a great season. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm not trying to discredit. I'm not saying Sean McVay's a bad coach. I'm not saying Matt Stafford's a bad quarterback. I'm just saying I think it's wrong to even entertain the discussion right now. Now, what happens next year and the year after? Yeah, we'll see. But I need to see some, actual down word trend from Bill Belichick, not this fictitious one that, again, I believe is a product of a lot of the Boston media. Because, again, I don't have to name the person who actually wrote that story, but when folks actually see it and see the name, you realize, okay, there's absolutely zero credibility to this argument because of the person who wrote it. And I'm very confident in saying that. But
I
John,
actually think I'm good friends with. I think I'm good friends with that.
I know you are. I know you are. That's why. Well, again, I knew this when I saw it, and hey, you can agree and disagree, and that's fine. I'm not going to put you in that position, but we are going to say goodbye for the weekend, though. So, like I mentioned earlier in the show, Monday, Wednesday, Friday is going to be kind of the goal for the next few weeks as we get a little bit closer to free agency. Give ourselves a little bit of a breather from the voice and talking, and of course try to maximize our time here on the air. So give us a follow on Twitter at FPC Radio Live. Definitely check us out on YouTube. Just search YouTube and full press coverage. It'll pop right up with all our great videos and stuff like that. And we will look forward to talking to you on Monday. Have a great weekend, folks, and we'll